All right, today we're diving into one of the most unbelievable stories in sports history. We're talking about the 1956 Olympic water polo match between Hungary and the Soviet Union, a showdown so intense, so brutal, it earned the unforgettable name, Blood in the Water.
It really makes you wonder, right? How does a game, something built on sportsmanship, turn into an all-out war in a swimming pool? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack here. So let's paint a picture. The year is 1956. We're in Melbourne, Australia for the Olympic Games. But for the water polo teams from Hungary and the Soviet Union, this semifinal match was about so much more than a medal. It was a proxy war, a real-life conflict playing out right there in the pool.
Now, to really get what happened in the water, you have to understand the explosion that happened on land just weeks before the Olympics even started. The tension didn't begin at the sound of the whistle. It had been simmering for years. And just look at how fast this all went down. In late October, Hungarians rise up in a massive revolution, desperate for freedom. But then, on November 4th, just a couple of weeks before the Games, Soviet tanks storm Budapest in what they called Operation Whirlwind. They brutally crush the uprising. And the whole time, the Hungarian Olympic team is already on their way to Australia, totally cut off from what's happening back home. This quote from Dezo Germarti, one of Hungary's star players, man, it just says it all. You can feel the immense pressure they were under. This wasn't just about winning a game anymore. This was their one and only chance to fight for a country that had just been silenced. So just try to put yourself in their shoes for a second. You're on the other side of the planet getting these terrifying, broken bits of news about an invasion. You find out your home has been overrun and people are dying. All that fear, that grief, that absolute rage, it had to go somewhere. And for them, it was all going to be channeled into that pool. Which brings us to the match itself, December 6th, 1956. This is where all that political tension and personal anger is about to boil over in front of the whole world. You could practically feel the hostility in the air. The crowd was packed with Hungarian expats and people who sympathized with their cause. They weren't just cheering, they were screaming for their homeland. Every move in the pool was treated like a battle in the war back home. From the very first second, this was a brawl. I mean, water polo is a tough sport, but this was a whole other level. Under the surface, it was nonstop kicking and punching. And the Hungarians, playing with this raw, desperate energy, were just completely dominating. Hungary scores first, the crowd just erupts. Then they get another one. Their combination of pure skill and fury is just too much for the Soviets to handle. Another goal. You can just imagine the frustration building and building on the Soviet side. And with just a few minutes left, it's 4-0. Hungary has this in the bag. The game is won. But the fight was far from over. And this is the moment it all ignites. The story goes that the Hungarian star, Ervin Zador, hit his Soviet opponent, Valentin Prokopov, with a taunt. In a match already simmering with so much hate, that was the final spark. Prokopov just snapped. He swung around and punched Zador right in the face, gashing him open above the eye. When Zador came up for air, blood was streaming down his face, literally turning the water red around him. The crowd went into an absolute frenzy, police had to jump in, and the refs had no choice but to call the game. So the match was over, but the story? Oh, it was just getting started. What happened next would echo for decades. So with the game called off, Hungary was declared the winner. And believe it or not, they went on to win the gold medal, a huge moment of pride. But the most powerful thing to come out of it all was that image of Ervin Zador with blood on his face, defiant. It went viral, 1950s style, becoming this global symbol of Hungarian resistance. And then you have this number, 100. That's roughly how many Hungarian athletes, about a quarter of their entire Olympic team, decided not to go home. They defected. And what that means is they made the agonizing choice to leave their country, their families, everything they knew behind. They were afraid of what would happen to them under the new Soviet-controlled government, so they sought political asylum in the West. This was about life and death. You know, this whole story really stands as this incredible, intense case study of what happens when sports and politics collide, when a game becomes a stand-in for war. It's really this fascinating double-edged sword, isn't it? On the one hand, what happened in that pool raised massive global awareness for Hungary's plight. It created this powerful story of defiance.
But at the same time, it completely shattered the spirit of sportsmanship and put the athletes themselves in a dangerous, impossible position. They essentially become soldiers on a different kind of battlefield.
And this story has absolutely not been forgotten. It's been told and retold in documentaries like Freedom's Fury, making sure that the defiance of that Hungarian team remains a powerful lesson from the Cold War.
Which really brings us to the big question that hangs over all of this. That match was decades ago, but the issues feel more relevant than ever. When you think about boycotts, protests, and political statements at sporting events today, it makes you wonder, can sport ever really be just about the game? It's definitely something to think about.